One of the things you often talk about, Dave, is creating an open door approach to managing employee questions. Can you tell me a bit about that, please?
Yep, well, the basis for this is that a business can become really inefficient when little or no thought has been put into the way that organisational knowledge is created and then accessed and then used. So in our experience, one of the key failings is that when questions are asked of leaders by employees, it's either because knowledge is missing, so it's not in the company handbook or the policy documents, or it's hard to find, or it's inaccessible, or not enough training has been given, or that information or guidance is maybe incorrect and needs to be resolved. But the main problem, though, is that we're trying to address is that questions are often asked and answered in a private two-person communication, and no wider organisational knowledge is built up. So, and then the same question is asked again by someone else, and so on and so forth. And it's really inefficient because it's wasting the time of the employee and the expert who's providing answers again and again to the same things. So this is where Q&A channels come in. So from a simplistic point of view, they are online communities where employees can pose questions and expect a correct, accurate answer. But done properly, there's much more to a Q&A channel than just getting answers to questions. It is about driving change and improvement through workforce involvement. So how does this improvement come about? Well, as I mentioned before, it could lead to the company handbook being updated to resolve a gap or incorrect or misleading info. It could be improving training for staff. So we actually see Q&A channels as an essential learning and improvement tool in a business, but it's something that's overlooked by most companies. And in fact, it's even more important and relevant today when more and more people are working in a flexible manner and don't have someone sitting right next to them to get quick answers to.
Okay, so you're saying that one of the key purposes of a Q&A channel is to drive improvement. So how does that happen in practice?
Yep, I mean, ultimately, I guess that is what I'm saying. It's not worth investing in any new process or a tool in a business unless it's going to improve something. If a Q&A process is going to be introduced that just kept answering the same questions, it's not really doing much good. So in practice, it needs to have a bit of structure and a solid framework to ensure that gaps in knowledge are addressed. When it comes to structure, we normally like to capture questions in a format that's, I'll just bring up the screen just now. So, what is your question? What previous research have you all already done to try and find an answer to this? What is the urgency of it? It's going to help people to prioritise the provision of an answer. And what is the impact of it if you don't get a satisfactory response? And by capturing this type of information, what we're doing is we're giving ourselves the best opportunity to take the appropriate action to resolve the gap, i.e. the question that's been asked.
Okay, so employees get the answers they're looking for, which is great, but how does the continuous improvement, if you like, happen out of this?
Yeah, good question, Stuart, and that is really the key. So first of all, employees are going to stop using this type of approach if their questions aren't answered to their satisfaction. And secondly, the experts, leaders, they are going to quickly make their dissatisfaction known if they're getting inundated with the same or similar questions all the time. So taking the first of these points, you are going to need some sort of digital community-based solution to raise and track the status of questions. We'd normally recommend that a moderation facility is part of this. So for Q&A channels to be most effective, everyone needs to be able to see what's been raised and what's been answered. That's how knowledge spreads and builds up in a business. But with the best will in the world, you can't stop questions being asked that push the boundaries of what's acceptable for this type of community. So we would recommend putting everything through a moderation queue first, politely respond to anything that can't be published, and publish and progress the rest of the questions. On the second point, so ensuring that experts aren't inundated with the same question, I think there's two key aspects to this. So the first is to actually address the gap that caused the question in the first place. So you're not just responding to the question with answer, but you are going to follow through with a plan of how the gap in knowledge or whatever has caused the question is going to be resolved. And the second is to think carefully about how the question and answers themselves can be used to build up a bank of organisational knowledge. So, if you can build Google-like search results into your question submission process, you can really cut down the number of duplicate questions that are raised.
Okay. Any final tips on rolling out question and answers, Dave?
Well, just one final point about the level of the organisation that the tool sits. So whilst it can be very effective to use Q&A channels for cross-business areas like HR policies and procedures, the real benefit starts to come with rolling out locally, so down to business units and departments and teams. And that means identifying the right person, or probably a couple of people, at each of those levels to own and manage each Q&A channel. So what works well in our experience is to choose a cross-organisational area like the HR things we just talked about there, that always gets lots of questions, bed it in there, and use the learnings from that area to then bed in a process at that more local level.